Thank you. We'll call the meeting to order. Ask everyone to rise for a moment of reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. We've got a published agenda that's been circulated. I'll accept a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Reverend Newbill. Second, thank you, Ms. Kessler. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay.
Aye.
Agenda is adopted. Mr. McElroy, do we have a core value?
Yes, we do. We have several core values, one of which is safety. And as safety is a core value, we start each meeting at JEA with the safety briefing. In the event there is an emergency, Ted Hobson will call security and 911. Mike Brost will be in charge of CPR should that need to be administered. In the event we need to evacuate the building, help your neighbor, and we will approach the stairwell to the left of the elevators as we came in and exit safely and slowly and orderly, holding the handrails. We will exit onto the plaza and proceed to the open parking lot on the southeast corner of Main and Church Street. I remind everyone, should we have to do that, safely cross the street using the traffic signals. Cell phones on off, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McElroy. Turn to our Chief Legal Officer for a sunshine law statement. Ms. Brooks?
Yes, this is a duly noticed public meeting, open to the public and consistent with Florida laws. Quorum is physically present in the room. We have two members appearing by telephone, Ms. Kessler and Mr. Cumber. Minutes will be taken, and we're good to go.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. I haven't been handed any cards for comments from the public. Were there any? No. Thank you. Then we'll turn to council liaison's comments. Our new council liaison, Honorable Matt Schellenberg. Mr. Schellenberg.
Thank you very much. I just came, and it's an honor to be here, and I look forward to representing the city council here and hopefully contributing to the betterment of JEA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's not what he told me. He said he was here for the free lunch a moment ago. Anyone from Nassau County? No? Dr. Gaffney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally, we have, for our introductory comments, a commemorative copy of the Kiss of Life. Mr. Hightower.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Board members. Today, it was a special occasion, and to start out with, I think if we've heard the expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words, I don't think that ever before will ever underscore today. Today, we are celebrating a milestone at JEA. It was July 17th, 1967, 50 years ago yesterday to the day. It was a routine summer morning in Jacksonville, warm, muggy, overcast, not much has changed, much like today. A line maintainer's crew was out on the job, working to restore power that had been knocked out. Again, a daily occurrence. JE lineman Jim Thompson and Randall Champion had climbed their poles, belted themselves into position to begin their work. All the lines were dead except one. That live wire found Randall Champion. And suddenly, the life is literally jolted out of Randall Champion. He is left dangling upside down, unconscious. Other linemen scramble down their poles, racing toward Randall. Jim Thompson reaches the pole first and scales it. Immediately, he begins pumping air into his friend's lungs, slowly bringing life back to Randall Thompson's body. At that moment, a Jacksonville Journal photographer, now the Times-Union, Rocco Morabiondo, happened upon the scene as he was out on assignment. He realized the emergency and radios for help immediately. He then takes some pictures. An editor dubs the photo the kiss of life, and it appears on the front page of the paper next day, 50 years ago today. That photo is seen around the world and garners a Pulitzer Prize for Rocco the next year. Linemen all over the world recognize the photo, but not everyone knows the story behind it. Ladies and gentlemen, board members, it helps underscore the inherent danger of utility work. Danger our employees face every day. That is why safety is a top priority at JEA and is part of our culture. And you can see how teamwork also plays a significant role in how we watch out for each other at JEA, whether it's out in the field, at our power plants, our water waste plants, or here at the JEA Tower. And now I'd like to show a brief clip from a short film about this incident. It was done by the Jacksonville Historical Society for today, to commemorate today. If you will watch the screens.
It happened on the northwest side of town along the 1600 block of West 26th Street. The day was oppressively hot and overcast. Rocco, driving to Moncrief Yard to photograph striking train workers, decided, for no particular reason, to go this way. And here he saw some electrical linemen.
He said linemen were always interesting to take pictures of because the different things they did and all the equipment.
So he casually made a mental note. Maybe come back later and shoot what they call a daily.
Just anything they could use in the paper for weather or whatever.
So when he got through with the strikers,
Instead of coming to the office, I went back. I don't know. I believe in divine guidance. Something made me go back to where these men were working. I had a few shots left on the film. And lo and behold, when I got back there, people were yelling, screaming. And I looked around and I saw this man hanging.
Did you know what had happened to him?
No.
Rocco instinctively grabs his Rolleiflex, gets off one shot, and sees the man on the pole is injured. So he races back to the car and calls the Journal on his two-way.
I told the desk, I said, somebody's been hurt out here. You better send an ambulance.
Now, that's the kind of guy he was. He was more concerned about that guy's safety than he was his picture. I mean, he could have been out there taking pictures all that time.
Meantime, J.D. Thompson, an apprentice lineman on another pole 400 yards away, hears the ruckus.
I run on down to where I heard him hollering, and I could see, before I got to the pole, I could see him hanging upside down.
The man hanging upside down was Randall Champion, another apprentice lineman, called Hamburger because he had a second job at Burger King. Randall had hit a high-voltage wire.
They were saying somebody help him, you know. You had people on the ground that were groundmen that didn't climb. And in fact, they didn't even have any tools to climb the pole, you know. They didn't have any hooks or a belt or anything of that sort, so they had to get somebody that could climb.
That somebody was J.D. As he shimmied up the pole, Rocco returned with a fully loaded camera.
And by this time, J.D. was up on the pole and had him cradled in his arm.
You thought he was dead?
Yeah, I really did, yeah. His face, his cheeks is blue, and there's no movement to him, no breathing, nothing going on here.
I shot one. I said, heck, I can't see what's going on up there. So I backed way off.
I tried to give him mouth to mouth. I didn't quite have him where I could get air into him. So I moved some.
He had him in his arm, and he was breathing into him.
Put 3 or 4 breaths, and then also trying to squeeze on his chest.
And then I shot that picture. That's the one we have.
When he actually started breathing, I can remember it was just like a hiccup or something. He just kind of jerked a little bit, you know, and I knew there was some life here then.
Then I shot pictures of them bringing him down the pole. Just before he got on the ground, he came to.
His arms were just going everywhere, which his legs and everything was kicking, you know, and he had his spikes on his too.
I started fighting trying to get loose from the wire because I didn't realize I had been out and I thought I was still on the wire.
We just held him there for a minute, you know, just got him calmed down, just held on to him.
I just got my pictures and got out of there. That was it.
Well, not quite. There was the small matter of getting the picture in that day's paper.
Rocco called in and said, I think I've got a pretty good picture. Those were his words. I think I've got a pretty good picture. And I said, well, come on in and we'll try to get it in, because we were already very close to deadline.
Here it gets dicey. Miss the deadline, and the picture doesn't make the paper. Instantly, and literally, it becomes yesterday's news.
It wasn't going to be any good the next day.
Didn't lessen the quality of the picture if it was old, but it was old, you know. That's not what we were in business for. We're a newspaper. You publish it while it's news.
Rocco, racing the clock, begins processing the film, an intricate, laborious task.
Heck, you don't know what's going to happen in developing film. Maybe the film could have got off the roll in the camera and not even have a picture. Develop it and not see anything on the film. Anything could happen.
Well, that entire process took usually at least 30 minutes, you know, just from the time you took the film out until the time you had your print. And by then we were well past our photo deadline.
Which meant one thing.
They weren't going to use it.
But then, Dick Boussard, for the first time, finally sees the picture.
I said, we've got to get that in, break the deadline, and get that picture in the paper today.
Did you guys go stop the presses?
More or less, although the press hadn't actually started yet, but it was about to.
So they slapped it on the front page, 2 columns wide, and this man, Bob Pate, slugged it, the kiss of life. And somehow they managed to put 5 more of Rocco's pictures inside the paper. They got it all in, and just in time. Yet nobody in the newsroom really celebrated. Nobody sat back and marveled at this amazing photo.
On behalf of the JEA family, Mr. Chairman, board members, it is my privilege to introduce the man who saved Randall Champion that day. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. J.D. Thompson, a hero in our eyes, a dedicated, now retired JEA employee who is here with his wife, Sandra, and his daughters, Sherry and Gail. Would everyone please welcome Mr. Thompson. This is how it's been. You have no idea what it was like just to get him here. As it's been quoted in the newspaper, he said, and I will quote, "I did what everybody else was doing. I was doing my job." Thank you. Now let me introduce 2 current JEA employees who will talk for a moment about what that photo means to them and the safety culture at JEA. First, Jeremy Matthews, the Director of Electric Systems, Construction and Maintenance, and Chris Richardson, Construction and Maintenance Foreman. And I'm take a look at this. Chris Richardson's dad was a member of the crew that day. So Jeremy and Chris, if you all will come forward.
Afternoon. Afternoon. My name is Jeremy Matthews, Director of Electric Systems, Construction and Maintenance, and I've been with JEA for a little over 20 years. And since day one, I've always remembered this photo hanging in the walls on both our electric service centers. And it is the guys really have a lot of pride in this photo. We even had it printed on the back of the rodeo team's shirts this year that competed in the state and national competitions. It is a reminder of the hazards associated with the job and looking out for each other, teamwork, looking out for your fellow crew member. And for us, constant reminder for us to continue to focus on new, innovative ways to reduce things like this from happening, safety training and procedures, and just keep reinforcing it daily. Chris?
Hey, good afternoon. Do I have to use the microphone? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name's Chris Richardson. I've been with the company about 28 years. My dad was friends with JD and Mr. Champion. And I think this kind of goes beyond the picture. I'm not going to speak for Mr. Thompson. He's got his own voice. He knows what we like to say. But this man came through our company when our company was on Pearl Street, when it was a yard that guys just showed up at every day, and it's probably one of the dirtiest, nastiest places you'd ever think of. So when these guys left the yard, in my mind, they're like us today, probably even worse. They were probably grinding on each other. They were probably, we don't always get along. We love each other. When the time comes to help, we help. We're not gonna leave somebody out. You're not gonna leave a man behind. But you might not have been getting along with that guy that morning. But as soon as we were on the jobs, we're cohesive. Everybody's working, everybody's looking out for one another. And I feel like that's what Mr. Thompson was doing that day. In saying that and skipping forward, I've always seen that picture. That picture's always been a part of my life. When I was a kid, that picture was always in a drawer, and I never knew the whole story behind it. I knew Mr. Thompson's daughter in high school. I didn't put the two together until I was older. I went to see Mr. Thompson's home when I was probably 13 or 14 when they built the house. And saying this about him, I think JEA gave him this award. It was a very large memorial thing. He had it in his closet because it meant something to him in his heart, not for us. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's not something that in my mind, he'd have done it for anybody. He did it for Mr. Champion. I knew Mr. Champion limitedly. He was still here when I started here, so I knew him vaguely. But I've been around Mr. Thompson most of my life here and there. We talk occasionally. We do this, we talk, so we can talk a lot. I say this from the heart. That picture means a ton to me. And in saying that, I didn't know my dad was even on this crew until I made apprentice lineman. And I kept looking at the pictures. I'm like, this guy looks familiar, and I see the back of his head. I was like, that's my dad. And I talked to him about it. I said, were you there? He said, I was the foreman. I said, why didn't you ever tell me? He goes, you never asked me. He said, it was 2 weeks in, he said, it's the worst thing that could happen for any foreman, but a new foreman, that's terrible. And as a foreman, you keep an eye on, and as you get older in life, you don't pay as much attention sometimes, and you take a look at that picture, and all of a sudden you're up, and you're thinking about the things that are going on. So in my mind, that Pearl Street yard probably means as much to him as it did to my dad and to me. I know going there as a kid and seeing the guys there, it was a rough bunch of guys. It's still a rough bunch of guys. And again, it's just one of those things where you'll come back to and we get along when we're there. I'd like to thank him for coming down here because I know it's hard on him and his family. I wish Mr. Champion could have made it this far because he was very truly a nice man. It's funny to see him as a troubleshooter and thinking about what he had come through and then have what happened to him again happen. And in saying this about Mr. Morabito, not to have ever met that man face to face, he had more stories about JD and Mr. Champion than I could even. I think they had so much after this picture that meant a lot to them too. So that's about all I got to say. Thank y'all for hearing me out.
Thank you.
One of the folks that we would like to introduce at this time, and again, a little special, is Ms. Perkins, who is a JEA employee and retiree. We have a lot of retirees. She was also moved by this, by a picture's worth 1,000 words, and she would like to show that this is going to become part of the JEA family in this building and then hopefully to our new building. So Ms. Perkins, if you will come up and share with us this moment.
Hello. I worked with JD and Champ at the System Operations Control Center for probably a year before I knew it was them in the picture. I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's so cool. And his boss said, you know, that's JD and Champ. I was like, paradigm shift. So anyway, I have loved this picture forever. And I respect the men who do the work so much. And I respect JD so much. He's a friend. Fast forward, I did employee orientation for a good while. And I used to tell the story. And fortunately had that video to show the new employees. I have been a wood carver and a clay sculptor. And this is not my eventual piece, but this is a piece that is ready for today. So I wanted to present this to JEA.
Thank you, Jeremy, Chris, Ms. Perkins, particularly JD. Mr. Chairman, if I could have you and Paul, Mike Brost, who takes care of everybody over on the electric side, if I can have you all please join us for a special presentation on behalf of all JEA employees. If you all will be right there, JD. We're going to have two pictures, this one and another one. Chris, Jeremy, need you all up here. This is a photograph that is going to be kept here, either in our lobby or in our customer service center. And then if we do get a new building, but this will be part of the forever. So JD and Mr. Chairman, if you will unveil it, and this will be part forever. Here. If you all would join your dad and your husband up there, we'd like to have a picture of you all with your family, with your husband. And if you will be there with Paul, and keep it. And if Paul, if you and then Mr. Chairman, we'll do one with the family, and then we'll do one with you all. On each side. On this. Yeah, if we can get you all on the other side. Paul, Mr. Chairman, if you'll join him for one more picture. Thank you all. Appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, in recognition of this event, I have a proclamation from our mayor, who unfortunately tried, but he was booked before we could do this. But I will tell you, up until 11:15, he was attempting to be here, JD, to be with you, but he couldn't do it. Proclamation from our mayor. Whereas JEA is the 8th largest municipality utility in the United States, serving an estimated 455,000 electric, 337,000 water, and 261,000 sewer customers, and whereas JEA is committed to ensuring the safety of its employees, contractors, customers, and the communities it serves, and recognizes that successful safety performance requires individual involvement and teamwork, and whereas on July 17th, 1967, R.G. Champion, a JEA line maintenance worker, made contact with a 4,160-volt line while on the job. His fellow lineman, J.D. Thompson, immediately began resuscitation efforts while the two dangled from their safety harnesses on the utility pole. And whereas at that moment, Jacksonville Journal photographer Rocco Morbillo happened upon the scene and used his car radio to call for an ambulance before beginning to take photographs. And whereas the famous dubbed Kiss of Life ran on the front page of the Downtown Journal on July 18th, 50 years ago today, 1967, and was soon seen around the world and earned Rocco a Pulitzer Prize for spot photography in 1968. And whereas J.D. Thompson was honored as a hero for the successful resuscitation, both men continued to work at JEA until the retirement. And whereas the iconic photo continues to shine as a positive light on JEA and Jacksonville. Now whereas, therefore, I, Lenny Curry, by virtue of the authority invested in me as mayor of Jacksonville, Florida, do honor July 18, 2017, Kiss of Life photo 50th anniversary in Jacksonville, and expresses our deep appreciation to JEA and all employees, past and present, for their continued commitment to safety, reliable service to our community. Witnessed July 17th in the year 2017, signed Lenny Curry. Mr. Chairman, so concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. Mr. Thompson, on behalf of the entire board of directors of JEA, I want to thank you for your many years of service. You may say that that was just another day where you were doing your job, but it certainly changed the life of Mr. Champion and his family. And this photograph is forever going to be a symbol of your heroic efforts that day. So while there may have been a champion on that line, there was a hero that came to his rescue, and we thank you for that. We really do. Thank you. And Mr. Matthews and Mr. Richardson, I appreciate you adding your voice. I appreciate you coming and remaining a testimony to the hazards that JEA employees face every day. And I appreciate you being willing to put your life on the line out there for yourself, for our customers, and for your fellow linesmen and utility workers. I hope you never have to be called upon to do something like this, but I appreciate your willingness to do it if called upon. So thank you, too. We're going to move on to the more mundane portion. Mr. Thompson, I hope you and your family stay. I'd like to get a photograph with you after this is done. But we've got a consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented? So moved. Thank you, Ms. Flanagan. Is there a second? Mr. Newbill, thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Cumber. Thank you, Ms. Kessler. Any opposed? Consent agenda is adopted. Call on Carrie Stewart, Chief Customer Officer. Ms. Stewart. How are you today?
I'm great. Good afternoon.
That's a tough act to follow.
I know. The consent agenda?
No. I think you beat that one. Touche.
A little levity.
She is quick, really quick. Gotcha.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. Thank you for giving me the time today to address some concerns and some inquiries from the board about our communications strategy. And today's presentation is going to be a look at the integrated communications approach to educate and empower our customers to make informed decisions about their utility services. Communications, as you know, is a critical component to our strategy to earn customer loyalty and is a key driver of customer satisfaction. It's the foundation to our establishing and cultivating a relationship with our customer. If you recall in the value pyramid, our customers told us that it's the cornerstone or foundation to becoming a trusted advisor. And if we don't do it right, it also becomes a dissatisfier. I hope that today's presentation will provide a glimpse into our communications philosophy, our alignment with the voice of our customer, and our relationship with J.D. Power. I believe you will see that the results to date demonstrate that despite challenges of communication channels that we can't and don't control, and having a smaller budget than many of our larger IOU competitors, you will see that JEA's positive, proactive, comprehensive, strategic approach to communications is receiving positive results from our customers, and they are our measure of success. So how do we reach our goals? We need to create as many positive contacts through as many relevant channels as possible. We need both reach and frequency. We also need high-touch contacts, which offer the greatest impact, but keep in mind they also have the highest cost per contact. It's important to remember that we serve a diverse community with diverse communication needs, so it's critical to have a mix of contact types to generate reach and frequency while delivering as many high-touch contacts as possible. Our goal is to have frequent and direct communication with our customers on the topics that they most want us to communicate with them about, and we want to do that cost effectively. Our goal is to be less than 2 cents per contact. We are currently right at 1 cent per contact, and have high communication recall by our customer. We had a communications recall of 52% in 2014. In our most recent study outcomes, we are at 60%. That's quite a leap in just 3 years. So how much is enough communication? This measurement from J.D. Powers is the most recent measurement, and it tells us that our customers believe we are communicating at about the right level. We are ranked nationally, we are ranked in the top quartile nationally in communications, and 86% of our customers believe we are communicating the right volume. And what do they want to know? This is a very busy slide. I'm not going to go through it line by line, but through J.D. Power research, we have a good understanding of what our customers want us to communicate to them. We work hard at keeping our focus and communication on what matters most to them. As we look at our various types or channels of communication, we've categorized them into 4 categories: owned media, shared media, commonly called social media, paid media, and earned media. You'll see at the bottom right corner of each slide that we've tried to create a snapshot of each category's strengths. Green meaning that it's a strong indicator, yellow is fair, and red is low. Owned media are channels unique to JEA. It's our bill inserts, newsletters, and JEA.com. These are ways we have to engage customers and provide a medium to deep level of communication. I want to talk about apps for just a second and our new JEA.com. The recent launch of our responsive design-enabled website provides a similar experience to an app when using a mobile device. What you're seeing on the screen are actually screenshots of what the website looks like on a mobile device. And then you will see that it looks very much like an app that you might use for other activities. With this responsive design, we only need one code base to be maintained, and it greatly simplifies and streamlines our day-to-day operations for payment and other options. With an app, not only does the website code have to be maintained, but it also has to be maintained for multiple mobile platforms like Apple iOS, Windows, Android, and other operating systems like Linux. These must be maintained through multiple app stores as well, and we must meet the standards set by each of those app stores. But the JEA.com new site has all of the top transactions. They're right there on the landing page, as you see to the far left of the slide, and are easily accessible throughout the site, regardless of the screen size. All of that being said, we will continue to evaluate the cost of developing and maintaining an app on multiple platforms against the level of expected adoptability of our customers. During the course of an average month, we send about 400,000 emails to customers. This does not include transactional emails or alerts like outage alerts or payment notifications. During FY16 and 17, we have to date sent close to 8 million emails to customers. Again, not including transactional. So what's in those emails? We send them for promotional campaigns such as My Budget and AutoPay and eBill. We also send out our newsletter, focusing on main topics that again are identified by J.D. Power as what our customer wants to hear most about. And those are things like conservation, safety around electricity, infrastructure improvements, things like that. The 2 peaks that you see on the graph may be familiar to you because they represent the increased communications during Hurricanes Hermine and Matthew. For our outage alerts, you might be interested to know in our boil water notices, we use geofencing software to identify potentially impacted customers through our GIS system so that we can make sure that the right customers get the right messages. Moving on to some more owned media communications, these are the high touch, high value that we talked about at the beginning. But again, these are our most expensive, but they're certainly impactful. They play an important role when needing to provide in-depth or specific purpose communications to our customers. For specific topics, we use brochures, flyers, targeted emails, and short videos. Community events, as listed here, could be a single primary focus event that we actually host, or our participation in an existing event to share our portfolio of customer solutions, like the Home and Patio Show. We have partnerships such as Mosh Energy Exhibit, which allow for long-term community exposure. Over 136,000 students visit the exhibit at Mosh each year alone. Moving on to social media or shared media communications. We're continuing to build out our following on social media. Today, we only reach roughly 13% of our customers this way. In the future, it will become not only a communications and service channel, but hopefully a transactions channel as well. Over the last couple of years, social media has become an important relational and customer service channel for many of our customers. There's been an increase in the number of customers who turn to social media to contact JEA. They use social media to resolve account-related inquiries and to just ask general questions. Social media provides that extra option in addition to the customer call center for JEA customers to reach JEA. During the fiscal year FY16, we responded to an average of 167 customer service inquiries per month just via social media alone. Our social media reach has increased exponentially in the last couple of years, but we are still only reaching about 13% of our customers through this medium. We understand the power of social media for our customers. We also understand that social media is different for JEA and utilities than it is for other companies. Our customers rely on us for tips, outage information, and construction information, but more importantly, they rely on us to help with complicated billing issues and other inquiries that affect their abilities to obtain the essential services that we provide to them, and that's electricity, water, and sewer. Paid media communications provide us the reach and frequency that's essential to stay in front of our customers. Using paid ads on social media dramatically expands our reach in those channels. We have a weekly radio show that helps to humanize JEA and creates a personalized touch with a call-in show and real-life interaction with JEA employees. So far this year, we've spent $1.1 million on paid media to generate about 90 million contacts.
I'll give you some more time.
Okay, I'll speed up, which is about 0.012 cents per contact. So for the 1.1 million we spend, we get a very good return on overall contacts. Earned media. We continue to work on our earned media communications by providing timely responses to media requests. We pitch ideas to the media about projects and initiatives that we have. We provide tours of our facilities, and we set the record straight if inaccuracies are reported. And what's interesting about customers' perception of media coverage can be seen on the next slide, and this might be surprising to you. This slide shows that we've seen a sizable increase in customers reporting positive media coverage. And now that there are more customers who recall positive media coverage than negative or neutral media coverage, we score extra points on customer satisfaction with J.D. Powers. And you can see about 2015 is when those lines converged, and then we have seen an increase in customer recall of good media coverage. Recall by channel. While we're continuing to make gains in direct utility communication, that's our e-bill, our newsletter, direct communication to the customer versus the industry, you'll see that media communication recall remains well above the other top performing utilities. While recall for media communications remains higher than our direct communications, we've made great gains in terms of recall by topic, and you'll see those on the right hand of the slide. And again, when customers recall direct communications from us, they have increased satisfaction, and we get more points on our J.D. Powers scoring. So more and more customers are expecting customized solutions to the channels that they choose to receive them. Our content strategy will continue to focus on the voice of the customer as defined by J.D. Power. As I stated earlier, we currently are using geofencing to provide alerts to customers in specific geographic areas for outages, boil water notices, and other important or urgent matters like construction. The completion of the integration with Message Broadcasts, which is our alerts vendor, and the launch of the Alert Preference Center on JEA.com has the potential to have a big impact on customer satisfaction as it will streamline our alerts. We will continue with our integrated strategy led by the voice of the customer for frequency and depth of communication and for desired content and preferred channel. We'll continue to use the most effective and cost-effective means to strengthen customer satisfaction and loyalty as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Any questions, Ms. Flanagan? Revenue Bill? Mr. Pelway?
Just one question. I'm still interested in the Twitter account.
Okay.
We don't have anything in here on.
That was the shared media slide.
Do we know how many customers we have that are?
Do we know? I don't know off the top of my head how many,
Approximately 5,000.
approximately 5,000.
More as a percentage of our customer base than that other utility down south has as a percentage of its customer base, Mr. Petway.
About twice as much.
Well, there's always some good news somewhere, isn't there?
Ms. Kessler or Mr. Cumber, any questions for Ms. Stewart?
None here. I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Stewart, before you go, I had a couple of questions. In terms of penetration, I saw if we're at 5,000 or 400,000, what's the number on penetration for email access? Do you know how we get there?
We have email addresses for all of our customers.
Really?
Yes.
That's great news.
And as I said in one of the earlier slides, we send out about 400,000 emails a month to customers. And just from FY16 to date in FY17, we've sent out about 8 million emails.
How can we capture more cell numbers for text alerts? Do we make an effort to do that?
We absolutely make an effort to get cell phone numbers.
So if somebody shows up at the window to pay their bill, do we ask them for their cell
We
number?
absolutely do. And when they come in to turn on their electricity,
Capture
we
it
also.
there.
Some people
Good.
still only have home phones, but we make every effort to capture those mobile numbers so that as we expand our capabilities for messaging alerts on outages and boil water notices and other types of alerts, we have that information captured.
And the last thing, I'd like to ask you and your department and Mr. McElroy's staff to investigate ways, I didn't hear you touch on this and maybe I missed it, investigate ways to leverage our shared media and email for education and awareness. I know we've talked at prior meetings about educating our customer base on water conservation and other initiatives. I just think that education and awareness can be a powerful tool to influence customer behavior, and we should be looking at that.
Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
Call on Ms. Dykes, our Chief Financial Officer, for our quarterly financial report. Ms. Dykes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sorry, Ms. Stewart used all your time. Can you keep it brief?
I can. You ask, I deliver. This is the quarterly report for financial performance for fiscal year 2017 for the third quarter. And there's a theme that you'll see underlying the results so far this year, and the theme is around weather and the impact that weather has on our utility sales. I'll start with our key financial metrics. In a nutshell, our metrics look great going into the end of the year. We are expecting healthy debt service coverage. Liquidity looks good in both systems. Debt to asset ratio continues to come down, so we expect to have a very good story to report out to the rating agencies when we meet with them in December. In terms of electric sales, what we're seeing is sales lagging. That's been the theme throughout the year. Our sales for last year, we had a very mild winter, and so many of the winter months were posted pretty significant year-over-year declines. Last month, it felt like a hot month to me, but the statistics would tell you otherwise. And so we see that in the electric sales for last month. We came in at more than 10% below the prior year. So year to date, we're down almost 5% year-over-year. That is, and by the way, on the sales page, it's worth noting our wholesale is down over 60% year-over-year. Wholesale is primarily sales to Florida Public Utilities. It's down because they have a cogeneration facility that's come online this year that has significantly eroded their sales. They've been JEA's #1 electric customer in terms of sales volumes for as long as I can remember, and when we do report that out each year, by the end of this year, I expect them to fall at least 2 spaces. So they're not going to be our top customer going into next year because of the amount of generation they have on the island. In terms of financial results, we're seeing total revenues come in about $40 million below budget, driven by a combination of lower sales than budgeted and the rate restructuring that we implemented earlier this year. It breaks down into pretty significantly lower fuel revenue, which was expected based on that rate restructuring, and slightly higher base revenue. On the expense side, you see that the fuel expenses are coming in higher than budget, but it's offset by fuel fund transfers, which is a contra expense for this year, which will serve to reduce the fuel fund balance going into next year. Again, that was part of the rate restructuring that was approved by the board in the fall. Net revenues are about $62 million better than budget. And so we do expect to be coming back to the board with some debt defeasance recommendations in the electric system because of that performance. On the cost metrics front, on the lower left-hand side of this page, we are challenged on the cost metrics this year. These metrics are calculated in terms of dollars per megawatt hour sold, and our megawatt hours are down. And so when you reduce the denominator of that equation, it makes it very challenging to meet those cost metrics for the year. On the lower right-hand side, you see the fuel fund recap. We expect to reduce that balance by about $50 million over the course of the year, going into next year with about $130 million. This is where it gets really interesting when it comes to weather. Flipping to water sales. We've been talking about a theme over the past several years with increasing water sales, in fact, increasing faster than expected. Water sales, and much of that was driven by a drought. We've been in drought conditions up until June. We've been in drought conditions for several years, and that's resulted in significant increases in water sales year over year. And that had been the theme all the way through May of this year. In fact, at the end of May, we were up year over year almost 10%, which was very significant and something we pay a lot of attention to because of our consumptive use permit limitations. Then came June. And in June, it rained the majority of the days of the month, and we really got to look at just how elastic, particularly irrigation demand is when it comes to water sales. So for the month of June, we were down year over year almost 14%. And so it's just a very significant reversal in terms of the water sales trend, which is a good thing for the overall system. Still up 6.3% year over year, driven by all the rest of the months of the year. But given the amount of rain that we're getting, we're receiving a pretty big reduction in irrigation volumes. From a financial results perspective, total revenues are forecasted to come in about $35 million over budget. That's driven by unit sales in the water and sewer system. Net revenues, about $40 million better than budget. We're seeing O&M expenses. We think they'll come in about $5 million under budget through the end of the year. From a cost metrics perspective, we're forecasting making these metrics fairly easily buoyed by sales. Again, we've got the help on the denominator in the water and sewer system. No change in the debt to asset ratio slide from the last time that we reviewed it last quarter. We are still showing very significant progress being made in terms of the health of the balance sheet in both systems. There's a slight uptick in our weighted average interest rates in the portfolio, but nothing material and still coming in well below budget in terms of total debt cost. From a risk analysis, we do have exposure to a number of creditors that we track each month and provide this report to the board. No changes in any of the creditworthiness of any of our counterparties. We did have a credit facility that was renewed since the last time we gave this report. We've got another one coming up in November. No issues expected with any of those future renewals. And I love that page is boring. From an investments perspective, we are, while we're seeing a tick up on the debt side, which is a negative from a cost perspective, we're seeing a similar tick up in our investments portfolio, excuse me. So we're at about a 121 yield on the right-hand side of this page, which is generating some additional investments revenue for us. And I'll just quickly wrap up with a look at how our rates compare to other utilities in the state. We are below the median for both the electric system and the water and sewer system. In fact, on the water and sewer system, we've moved down 4 places over the last 2 years because we've been able to hold rates steady while other utilities have been forced to increase their rates. That's a trend we expect to continue as we see utilities having to increase water and sewer rates to pay for large capital programs within their utilities. Any questions on third quarter financial results?
Thank you, Ms. Dykes. Ms. Flanagan.
Just one that's probably very easy for Ms. Dykes. On slide 4, can you just refresh our memory in terms of the flip of signs between the fuel fund transfers being a positive figure in the fiscal 17 budget versus forecast? Does that have to do with the rate restructures being passed subsequent to the budget being approved?
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, at the time that we set the budget, we kept the existing fuel rate through the budget process, which would have resulted in a deposit to the fuel fund of almost $40 million. We reversed that when we did the rate restructuring in the fall, which is what's resulted in the sign flip.
Great, thank you.
One CFO to another. Good question. Mr. Pelway?
Ms. Dykes, do we know if the reduction of the use of water in June From less use of irrigation water, or just, is that just a general figure that comes out? Do we know where the less water use is?
We're still studying it, is the short answer, but generally it points to irrigation.
Yeah.
There's a certain portion of water demand that's relatively inelastic, and the rest of water demand that we're seeing in terms of unit sales is due to irrigation. So as soon as I frankly was pretty surprised we saw that big a reaction that quickly. I would have expected it to take more time. But I think just because of the volume of rain and the number of days of rain, we saw a very significant reaction in the elastic portion of demand, which is irrigation.
One more question, Mr. Chairman. Sure. When we use less, 14% less, do we know where that came from? Did it come from the aquifer or from the wells? Do we have a way to figure out where we're saving water when we do that?
We are saving water from the aquifer, so
the
that
aquifer
roughly
first.
mirrors the reduction in withdrawals from the aquifer on the well
Is that
side.
where that is?
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Kessler, any questions for Ms. Dykes?
None here.
Mr. Cumber?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. One quick question. If you deploy any of your surplus to debt defeasance, do you anticipate any material bump in your weighted average interest rate? Can we drop that down, or I assume you'll be looking to defease the highest rate debt?
We're looking to
If
do actually a
possible.
combination of things. We're looking to defease the debt that's got the lowest redemption cost associated with it, which isn't necessarily the highest interest rate debt, unfortunately. My guess is we're not going to see a real material move in that weighted average cost, because if we do a defeasance, we're maybe talking about the tens of millions of dollars against a portfolio that's billions of dollars, and so it's probably not enough to move the needle, but we'll certainly work toward that goal.
Great. Well, I hope all your days and slides are boring. It makes us happy.
Thank you, me too.
Yeah. Okay, next, Mr. McElroy, monthly operational review.
Mr. Chairman, we'll start with water and wastewater, the monthly scorecard. First up is safety, and we can see that we are behind target. We had a goal of 1.4 RIR. We ended up the month at 1.97. In terms of recordables, through the year, June 30th, the 9 months, we had 29 recordables last year, 31 this year, so we're up 2. We continue to focus on safety, and we, as an organization and the Corporate Safety Council, are focused on rolling out next year a drive towards compliance and accountability, and something we think will hope improve our safety performance in the years to come. On the operations side for water and sewer, all look in the green category. We're a little over in the sanitary sewer overflows. Would say that at the 30 average is best-in-class performance, system our size, when we look at the pipe miles, et cetera, and benchmark against EPA standards. So we'll be a little bit above that this year, maybe approaching 40. We've averaged about 30, 32 over the last 4 or 5 years. Each time we have a sewer overflow, there is a comprehensive review of that root cause analysis, and nothing from a systemic standpoint has really popped up on these issues. So we continue to watch that closely, and we'll continue to work on it. Looking and turning to the electric system, the T&D grid performance, the middle of the chart, numbers look good. Electric outage duration, the second line item there with the red dot, is a little behind target. We had targeted 80 minutes. We're now at 91. And this is some of the storm activity we heard about in terms of June, more storm activity than we had in prior year. Still good performance when we benchmark against other groups and other utilities. On generation plant performance, 3% forced outage rate would be top decile performance. We're a little bit above where we said we had a June, 3 or 4 issues, nothing major. All units are back online. Looking at customer, the JD Power Satisfaction Index for residential, we did get the final numbers for 2017. and Ms. Stewart will give a comprehensive review to the board next month. We just got them late last week. We ended up in the first quartile. We were 20 out of 138 in residential, so we did achieve the goal being in first quartile. We're right about the middle of the first quartile. So strong performance up in all categories. In terms of we missed again the business with a number 12 ranking out of 86, so we missed the top decile. The rest of the performance indicators look strong. Solar, we continue to see some modest growth on rooftop. We plan to have a comprehensive and a broader solar strategy. Sometime we're looking at September that would look at our universal or utility side solar as well as the private solar. And that's the operating review, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. McElroy. Any questions, Ms. Flanagan?
On the J.D. Power business satisfaction, do we have insight yet into some of the determining factors that contributed to the year-over-year change, or is it too early to?
No, we do have that. Generally, we improved in all 6 categories, and we improved overall. The rest of the competition improved more. So in terms of when we look at the J.D. Power, both residential and business, each sector has 6 categories. We continue to improve all 6 categories. We did in business, we did in residential. The rest of the industry improved more than we did.
Reverend Newbill? Mr. Petway? Any questions, Ms. Kessler, for Mr. McElroy?
No, thank you.
Mr. Cumber?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And now, in keeping with my predecessor's agenda item of open discussion, an opportunity for the members of the board of directors to speak among themselves for any issues that we are otherwise prohibited by sunshine laws and Ms. Brooks from talking about.
You sure?
She said it was okay, sir.
As long as you're in this public meeting.
Yes, sir. Mr. Petway.
Thank you. That's nice. It's not my job, but I'd like to announce that our request for a appointment to the St. Johns River Water Management Commission has failed. Mr. Hightower has been deemed ineligible because he works for somebody that's regulated by that group. So we're back to square one, unless Mr. Hightower wants to start a new career someplace else, which I do not recommend. So that's an opening seat that we're very interested in, as you'll recall, and I'll just bring that to everybody's attention just for what it's worth. That's a gubernatorial appointment. And I'm not here to speak for the mayor, but I would like to remind all of you that we have an opening on our board, and I know the mayor is would receive any recommendations that you might care to offer. So we have those 2 items that I think are very important to us.
If any members of the board have any suggestions for a nominee for the JEA Board of Directors, please share them, Mr. McElroy, myself, or Mr. Petway.
Thank you, Mr.
Don't
Chairman.
share them directly.
With Mr. Howard, with me.
Yeah, share with
Share
Paul.
Mr. McElroy.
Me or Ms. Brooks, please.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks.
Or Jessica.
Or Jessica
Or
Laird.
Jessica in the mayor's
Jessica's the
office.
best.
And then you don't even have to tell, we
Joe?
don't have any intermediary there, do you?
That's
I wasn't gonna say
that'd be
that.
best.
Reverend Newbill?
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, sir.
No? Ms. Kessler?
No, sir.
Anything for the...
We miss you, Ms. Kessler.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm starting to take it
That
personally.
way.
Yeah, me too. But she said so.
You coming back?
I'm coming back. Don't
Okay.
worry, I'll be back.
Okay.
Very good.
We don't care if Hussein comes back, but we miss you.
Mr.
I
Cumber,
care if he comes back. Okay.
anything for the good of the order, Mr. Cumber?
I'm good, thank you.
Any new business to be heard? Any old business? Mr. McElroy, we'll turn to you for the director's report.
Okay, a couple of points, Mr. Chairman. Just a little I get a follow-up on the J.D. Power, the residential customer satisfaction survey. We'll have more detail next month, but this is a big deal for us. We improved overall 44 points. We achieved 744 points. That'll make more sense next, but that is the highest level ever from a JEA perspective. We improved in all 6 categories, all 6 phases of what we do every day. And communication was the #1 improved area or category. Communication with our customers. We're solidly in the first quartile, and competition's really, really stiff and stiffening up nationwide. So we continue to improve, and in this case, on residential, we improved more than the industry, because the industry itself continues to improve. So hats off to the team. It's a complete team effort. It's all units, each and every day, providing great service to our customers. Second, very positive announcement that we finished up, the team finished up 2 very significant electric system audits last week. And these were audits, one by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, audited our, I call it SIP 14 standard for physical security. There are 3 utilities being audited nationwide this year. We are one of the lucky ones, lucky of 3. And after 3,100 documents being requested, an evaluation and review, there were no findings, which is a phenomenal performance both from our compliance team and Mike's team and Paul Cosgrave's, everyone's team in terms of physical security across the board in our bulk electric system. Many don't realize, in terms of our consumers in our community, that we are a critical part of the bulk electric system tied into the entire eastern corridor. It's not just the distribution within our community. We're tied in at a transmission level, and thus we have the privilege of being audited by FERC. Some of the smaller communities and smaller munis and municipal utilities in the state are just distribution, don't have any transmission, and don't have this level of excellence required in their operations. We had a second audit that was on our critical infrastructure protection, and in this case, we get audited every 3 years, and so I think this is either the third time we've been audited, I think third. And this is a combination of NERC and FERC that oversee the Florida Reliability Coordinating Council, which is responsible for electric system reliability within the entire state of Florida. Again, a comprehensive review of all of our systems, and Mike's team does a fantastic job in meeting the standards, documenting the standards, and maintaining compliance 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And at the end of that, there were no findings again. And this is just a terrific accomplishment on behalf of the entire team, staying in compliance and providing this support and reliability, degree of reliability for our customers. I'll circle back on the FERC audit that we also had no findings, but at the end of it, very unusual in a way, that we had a number of compliments in terms of our team. So it wasn't just that there were no findings. And these folks are auditors. So there's, they were sort of almost a little touchy-feely at the end, saying that giving compliments to our team in terms of the performance and the culture of compliance that JEA has. So another big deal. And win for the utility. The building update, nothing really to report. We continue in terms of the contract, continue working forward on that. We do have a bid out in the market for an owner's rep to assist us in the process, both in terms of bidding the market and ultimately construction and through the entire process. Vogtle, 2 things going on today. The bankruptcy court, there was a hearing for the court to hear a request by Westinghouse to approve the continuing services agreement so that certain services will continue to be provided by Westinghouse in terms of the intellectual property designs and some engineering. The rest will be supported by Southern Nuclear, and that's important to get that approved. It's also important for the court to reject the EPC contract. We believe that both of those will happen today. We have been told that the DIP financer is in agreement, as is the creditors committee and the Department of Energy. Next step in the process is the Georgia Public Service Commission, late August or September, in terms of a hearing as to whether the project moves forward or not. And then finally, in the month of November, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recommend that we consider moving the board meeting. It is scheduled right now on the Tuesday in Thanksgiving week, where the calendar fell, to potentially the following week, the 28th. Could do it earlier on the Tuesday. I did nothing magic about the 28th other than it's just sort of that next Tuesday and follows after Thanksgiving, if that works.
Thank you. I don't know if everybody's got their calendar. I'd ask Melissa to survey the board for their availability on that following Tuesday after Thanksgiving.
What's that date?
The 28th?
That's after Thanksgiving?
After Thanksgiving, yeah.
Push it a week.
There's a lot of football around that weekend.
That's why you don't want to mess up with that.
I know, but
It's
people be hungover after the game.
Take Monday to sober up. Not you, but other people.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah. Thank you for that report, Mr. Director. Did anyone have questions about Paul's report, Ms. Flanagan? Did
I'd like to know how Mr. Pettway felt about my report.
Concerned about one part.
Yes.
Reverend Newbell, any comments or questions?
No, Mr. Petway is taking care of mine.
You had the same concern. Ms. Kessler, any questions for Mr. McElroy on his report?
No, thank you.
Mr. Cumber?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, well, again, congratulations to Carrie and her team and the entire JEA team for the JD Power results and the compliance, and again, the whole team for the independent audit findings. That's fantastic. Is there anything else to come before the board at this time? If not, we stand adjourned.